Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Josh Peak. And today happens to be, what is today? Monday, the 11th of January, 2021. So, what's going on, peoples? Um, I think this is episode 281. I don't know. I'm keeping track, sort of, but not really. I know I should be doing a better job. I don't know why I have these headphones on. I can't hear myself talk. So, let me take those off. If you're watching YouTube right now, you're seeing me do that. If you're listening, you're like, what the hell, dude? So, anyway, let's talk about some crap going on because this is the Stuff I Crap About podcast. Stuff I Heard podcast. I would like to talk a little bit about some shows that I've watched recently that have been pretty impressive. First off, I want to talk about a show called The Wilds. It's on Amazon Prime, and it has pretty much blown me away. The show is on Amazon Prime. It was, I guess, debuted in March, and I'm not exactly sure how it came about or if it was on another platform before. It seems to have a lot of following, but it is basically like Lord of the Flies. If you guys remember that book or that movie, why does my hair look like it's going the wrong direction? I've got this weird mirror effect going on my screen, and I can't figure out which direction I'm looking. So if I'm looking at the wrong place, sorry. I gotta fix some technical stuff here in the podcast studio. Um, but yeah, so it's like Lord of the Flies. So in Lord of the Flies, the book was basically about a group of young boys who are getting ready to head to some kind of camp or something and school, maybe boarding school, and their plane crashes or their boat crashes. I can't remember if it was a boat or a plane, and they're washed ashore onto a deserted island, and they have to figure out how to survive. So they have a power struggle on who's going to be in charge. They have differences of opinion on what's important, things like shelter, things like food. Um, there's a lot of figuring out how to live amongst these guys who are basically just figuring out with no supervision. And at a certain point, they turn on each other, and it gets really violent and really nasty. And this is like that, except this is a group of girls who are on a plane, on a private plane at that, headed to some sort of female empowerment camp. And the show pretty much starts with the plane crash, kind of like Lost. See, this reminds me a lot of Lord of the Flies and Lost combined because you're introduced to the tragedy right away. And then as you're watching the show, there are flashbacks where you get to see things that they went through up to that point. So there is a moment there where you're watching it and you're sort of like into what they're going through to survive, excuse me. But then you notice that there are people watching them in some kind of studio setting. They're watching them on their monitoring screens. It's not like television, it's different. It's like they're an experiment. And listen, if you're not into spoilers, skip this part. I'm going to just talk about the show because it was amazing to me. This show really showed a lot of what girls 16 to 18 are going through with the pressures of society and trying to figure out who they are and trying to keep up with their friends and with expectations. And it's a little crazy. I mean, it's a lot crazy. It's got a girl, one of the main characters. It addresses this girl who falls in love with this guy who's an author of a book that she read and actually really connects with. um she hears him speak at a public event, and she's into him, and she kind of tells him, I'm into you. And he's like, okay, you're a high school kid, I can't really talk to you. And she lies to him and tells him, I turn 18 in 2 weeks, at which time he's like, I mean, I like you, so if you're 18 in 2 weeks, cool. So they start a love affair, and he finds out later because someone sends him a copy of her birth certificate that she didn't turn 18. She just turned 17. So he knows that he's could be in trouble. He could go to jail for statutory rape, and because I'm guessing this guy's in his 20s, and it's not cool. I guess it's looked at differently if like your boyfriend is 18 and you're 17 kind of situation because you grew up together. You know what I mean? It's not like a predatory thing. But if you're in your 20s and the other person is 17, you're going, all right, what the hell are you doing? Like it's more of a ick matter. You know what I mean? Which is funny because years later it wouldn't have mattered. But it's those developmental years that's seen as innocence taken, not one of those situations where you go, no, I chose this. It's one of those things where it's like I didn't know what I was doing. So there is that element. So whenever he finds out that she's underage, he breaks it off. He's like, I can't talk to you. I can't see you. This can't happen. And to say this girl is a little much is taking it lightly. She is obsessed with things. She can turn the obsession up like 1,000 notches. The biggest surprise for me in watching this show is that each one of these young actresses are amazing actors. They are incredible because at no point do you not buy into them being their characters. There's another set of characters. They're supposed to be twins. One is very intelligent, and they do a flashback where you see her really bonding with her parents, who are both intellectuals and very intelligent. And then there's this other sister who turns towards diving, high diving, and she becomes an Olympic hopeful. As an elite athlete, she's under a lot of pressure, and they show you a little bit of that. They show you behind the scenes of the pressures of not being able to compete at the level she wants because genetically her body is just forming into being a beautiful woman. And so it gets into eating disorders, and it gets into her basically trying to starve herself and throw up enough to shape her body differently so that she can compete on a different level. And it shows her getting hurt by doing that and hurting herself. And each one of these women go through a microcosm of things that you see that society is kind of dealing with on a bigger basis. There's a girl on there whose father has some type of cancer or something. He's dying. He's not going to make it. And so she's trying to do whatever she can to make ends meet. So she's turned to selling drugs at school because she's like, at least then I have an income coming in and I can take care of my dad. They show a girl who's working in her family restaurant because they're struggling, and this is just their way to make a living. There's a girl who seems to have it all, but is very broken in a lot of ways. This young blonde girl, she seems like she's all about the pageant life, and yet one of her biggest fears is that she's grown up in this Christian household where everybody's expected to be perfect and look like everybody else and compete on a high level and be better than everybody else. So she's bought into this religious dialect of perfect nature and perfect sin and perfect life and right and wrong and this and that. And along the way she finds out that she's gay, and her parents, her dad especially, is very brutal and basically makes her lash out at the girl that she's in love with, which is her best friend. And in the process, the best friend kills herself. There's a moment where you see her take out a set of dentures, and she's got two teeth on the outside that never grew in, something to do with baby teeth never growing in that spot. So she has to have an implant that she can remove, and she's on this deserted island, so she's having to clean it all the time because there's stuff getting trapped in there, and she's ashamed because she's supposed to be this perfect beauty pageant girl, and she's not. She's got a lot of flaws. That's the thing, though, is like that's human nature, and a lot of these women, especially, they expect that life is supposed to be this Instagram life, and I've talked about that on the podcast before about how there are expectations placed upon people that are unnaturalistic, and it's a detriment to our society and to us that we expect that and that we strive for that. Um, there is a moment in realization of reality that you're supposed to go, hey, like, I'm okay. The people around me are okay. I'm okay with who I am, and I don't care what other people think. And in this show, you sort of see some of these characters come to that realization. They realize that um, it doesn't matter what society thinks. The first episode is going to get you. The first episode right away is going to get you. The main character lady, um, I think her name is Leah. She's being interviewed by these guys, and you're not sure why. Like, it's all very interesting the way they did the timeline, because they're being interviewed after they're rescued, and they're telling you about what happened, but they're being quarantined away from each other, supposedly for their safety. And there's all kind of nefarious stuff going on that you're like, wait, why are they not allowed to talk to each other? Why are they not allowed to see each other? Who made it? Who didn't make it? And during the show, you find out that it's all staged, that everything was fake, everything was set up for a reason, and they have people on the inside, and they're sort of manipulating the experiment to go a certain way for a reason. And you don't learn all of this until really the last episode. And it's one of those holy crap kind of shows that you're like, what? I mean, it's really well done, really well done. I don't think enough people are watching it. I hope more people do. Um, there's a lot going on with each one of these characters. One of the hardest episodes to watch for me was a young girl who, when she was a little girl, 8 or 9, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, she had an accident, and she had to relearn how to walk. And in that process, she apparently was sexually assaulted by a guy who was supposed to be a doctor. And it came out during her life that this guy, all these women came forward, and she came forward. And when she came forward, she lied, and she said that he didn't do anything because she wanted to protect him. And there's a moment where she has to come to her own truth and kind of admit to herself that he'd done this. And it's a very cathartic time for her, but it's also, I mean, as a dad, as a husband, as a father, I mean, and a brother, I know this kind of stuff happens, and it bothers me. It bothers me that it's allowed to happen. It bothers me that some people get away with it. It bothers me that that women really have a hard time navigating life in general, where they shouldn't have certain obstacles in front of them. But it's not just women. I mean, guys have predators out there too. It's just not talked about as much. I guess the conversation of this happening to young girls is more acceptable than it happening to young boys, but it is troublesome to watch. I mean, it really bothers me. Um, I'm hoping that people will watch the show and talk about it and share their experiences and open up about what's going on in their own lives, no matter the situation, but also realize that sometimes you have to get out of your own way. The first episode sets this up. She talks about the fact that there's expectations placed on women to, look a certain way, act a certain way, be everything to everybody all the time. And you can't. Sometimes you are who you are. They show a woman who, they keep calling her a basic bitch. But she's basically just trying to figure out her own life. And as a young teenage girl, she's hypersexual. She's enjoying that part of her life, and yet, she's criticized for doing so. She finds out at home that her father is having multiple affairs, and she doesn't know how to react to it. She's hurt. She feels damaged. She feels like, he was on her side all the time in arguments with her mom. And here he was hiding this secret all along, cheating on her mom, and she gets upset and basically sends out a blast of people's on everybody's information, all of his screenshots of stuff that he'd interacted with these people, which ended up hurting her mom even more. And the show is done in such a way that you don't know everybody's secrets. You don't know everybody's story. And I think it's going to come out later on that maybe they have an agreement, but the fact that she did this hurt the family more than if she'd have just gone to her mom and talked to her about it. Crazy, right? But still, every one of these girls has done something to where the family's been like, okay, you need to get away. You need to go to a female empowerment camp. I don't think they know that it's going to be this. I don't think they know that this is what's going to happen. And I don't think that any of the parents would have put them in the situation knowing what would have happened. But maybe they will. Maybe they have. Each one of their parents seems to have some kind of knowledge of more stuff, more connections. They're all connected in a certain way somehow, and I'm not exactly sure how. They come in groups of two oftentimes because they're in different areas. They know each other from school, or two of them know each other from school. In one case, you have two sisters that are there. But the show is just crazy. I mean, there was not one episode where I thought, well, this is boring. I mean, every episode was like, holy crap. I mean, it was really amazing. So anyway, I know you guys have probably heard me talk about that enough, but I highly recommend. It's called The Wilds. It's on Amazon Prime. Check it out. All right. So, Cobra Kai came out with season 3 around Christmas time. I think it was around Christmas time. Anyway, I got around to watching season 3. It's super 80s and super hokey and still kind of cute in its own little way. It's it's funny how the show went from watching Johnny come up as this guy whose life's falling apart after he got his ass kicked by Daniel LaRusso in the tournament back in the 80s to they're raising teenage boys and trying to figure out how to have competing karate studios battle. And then the main bad guy comes back and he takes over Cobra Kai, and suddenly there's 3 camps, and then it's just so 80s. It's so silly. Elizabeth Shue comes back in season 3, and it's a nostalgic remember the good old times kind of thing, and she calls them out on all their crap, and which is good. You get a flashback to Daniel LaRusso going to Okinawa to be where he spent time with Mr. Miyagi in season 2, and he gets to meet Kyoko again, and she's an adult now, and she's actually turned into quite a beautiful woman. I thought they played her as being this typical, soft kind of female in the show. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that character then. Her as an adult is pretty cool. It was nice to see him face off against his demons and face off against the guy who basically he fought to the death, supposedly, in season 2. Of course, this is 80s movie, so fighting to the death as a teenager is a little stretching it. I mean, let's face it. But anyway, the show is cute. If you like the Karate Kid, you're gonna love this. I remember watching the Karate Kid and thought it was cool. I watched the second one and I thought, but this is pretty good. The kids in it are good. I did think it was kind of funny how one of the characters was paralyzed at the end of season 2, and within a few episodes, he's up and walking and doing karate again. And I'm like, wow, that really happened fast. One guy got his arm broke, and like 2 episodes later, he's all well and doing karate again. And I'm like, really? Okay. They're letting a lot of time pass with not much time actually passing, if that makes sense. And, of course, if you're watching the show, you just go with it. You're like, all right, sure. Why not? That could happen. Right? It could happen. Yeah, sure. So anyway, Cobra Kai season 3. Let's see what else. So this is stuff I heard. So let's talk about some stuff I heard. Okay. I know right now a lot of people are big on what happened with the White House and with Trump and with the people who burst through the doors and went into the Capitol and kind of took over in a force of uprising. And I have found that it's very difficult to have a conversation with people about it. Now, it is easier to have a conversation with a person. Reminds me a lot of Men in Black, in the first one, whenever Will Smith and what's his name are sitting down talking, and he's like, why don't we just tell people that aliens are real? He goes, well, people are scary and dangerous in large groups of people. He said, but a person is smart and intelligent. You can have a conversation with a person. It's really hard to have a conversation with people. And that's the hard part is politics is about people. And oftentimes you get somebody in a podium and he's got a microphone and he's supposed to talk to people and you don't always say the right thing. So our president apparently got on stage and said a lot of wrong things and has such sort of isolated himself from people. The people have kind of made a choice to block him from inciting more riots. It's crazy that a guy who seemingly wanted to win a popularity contest and wanted everybody to love him sort of made himself to be the villain in this situation. Now, here's the thing is I don't necessarily think he's intending on being the villain. I think that I don't know. And I want to say that freely and openly that I don't know what's going on. This isn't the Stuff I Know podcast. This is the Stuff I Heard podcast. So what I believe is I don't know. This could be Russians dressed up as Trump supporters and trying to create discourse. This could be a group of anarchists who just believe that they love making things chaotic. I think there's some group called QAnon that's their whole thing is they just want to create chaos. They don't care what side it is. They just want to make it as crazy as possible because at the end of the day, they think it's all BS, and it kind of is. I mean, we survive as a civilization because we agree on a certain level of civil discourse, and we have to adhere to that in some sense. Now, I will tell you that I have it within me to once in a while go, nah, let's burn it to the ground. I mean, there is that element of, I don't know if it's humanity or American spirit or whatever you want to call it, but there is that moment of going, okay, I did this, but what does it matter? Like none of this matters. It's sort of like The Notebook. Women love watching The Notebook, right? So he builds the house and his dad dies in the process and he's building the house for him and his girl and he completes the house after a long time. And when he finally builds the house, he says he drank a lot and he really considered burning it all down. Why would you do that? Well, I know. Because, I mean, there is a part of the human experience where you're like, this is too weird. This is too, none of this is really that important. I mean, I spent all this time and this effort into it, but it didn't get me what I wanted. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way about life. That was one of the underlying segments in the movie, The Fight Club. But he was like, what was all this for? Like all this time that I did the stuff I was supposed to do. I went out and got a job. I went to college. I, got a career, but for what? Like what, for khakis? I mean, that was one of the comments in the movie. Did I do this so that I could get the thing out of the catalog so that my house looks like the catalog of the perfect life? Is that going to make me happy? So there is that. There's also the possibility that it's a bunch of people that are of the opposite party carrying Trump signs just so they can look like assholes to create some kind of image of the way things are. It could also be people who were extremely racist and thought, hey, here's our opportunity for us to show everybody, that we're in control. I don't know. It could be people who seriously are patriots who thought they were doing the right thing because they've listened to Fox News one too many hours and they're drinking their Kool-Aid so hard they're like, yeah, we should take over. Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I've said before that people are naturally followers. It's very hard to find somebody who's a leader, but there are leaders out there. I mean, if you hear anything having to do with Timothy McVeigh, I mean, he got in with a group of people who were leaders, and he was like, "That sounds like a good idea. Let's blow up the federal building." I mean, that was he didn't have. I don't know. Some people are lacking in a moral compass of what's right and wrong. But I really believe that if this is patriots, this is people who really believe they were doing the right thing in some way, that they were somehow taking a stand for America, which is possible. It doesn't necessarily make it right. The most puzzling part about this whole experience, though, was watching videos of guards ushering the people in, saying, "Come this way." It's like, what? Now, I know, being in the Marine Corps, I know chain of command, I know how things are supposed to work and everything else. And I know that the president is guarded by Marines, a special class of Marines that go through special schools and have a different understanding of what it's like to give your life for the commander in chief. Even if you don't agree with who he is or his politics or anything like that, you have a job to do and you buy into it 1,000%. And that was not a Marine that was saying, "Come on in the gates this way." That was like just a regular security guard. And I'm like, who's the security guard that's just ushering people in the gates? And why are they allowed to? Who allowed this? Was it the Democratic Party who said, "Oh, let's mastermind this idea"? All I can think of is like House of Cards. Let's mastermind this idea because if we allow this to come in after he said what he said, then we can get him out of here on the 25th Amendment or the 14th Amendment. And there's all these people now that are suddenly turning into, lawyers on Facebook, and they're all giving their opinions. Well, because of this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shut up. None of you people know. I mean, we're in a transition of power right now. We're going to have a new president in a few days. I hate to say it, but, right now our president is kind of off the rails. Now, I've said this before to guys that I work with and friends. I would really like him to come on social media at some point and go, "Listen, all this was an act because we had Kim Jong-un over here shooting nuclear missiles towards us." And I thought, hey, how do you defeat crazy? With crazier, because that works. And if that's the case, then that was genius. If he's just doing this because he wants attention, then I'm ashamed of it. I'm ashamed of the fact that he was our commander in chief. I don't think that Biden's going to make it better, but I don't think he's going to make it worse. Sometimes you just want people to shut up. I know this sounds silly, but from a guy who has a podcast called Stuff I Heard, but honestly, sometimes you just want people to shut up and you don't want to hear about it. You don't want to hear about it anymore. You want it to go away. And I think that's ultimately why he was not voted in this time. I think people were sick and tired of him. They just want him to go away. He's been banned from all social media platforms. Apparently, he tried to get on something called Parler, and a bunch of different, Apple and Google and Amazon were going to completely drop Parler because they were allowing him. And they came out and they said, no, we're not going to allow him either. Right now, companies have control of your freedom of speech, which is very interesting. But it's also not true. He has freedom of speech. He has a podium right there in the White House that he can freely speak anytime he wants. Is it better that you have communication from your president through your Twitter account, or is it better that you hear the news spoken to him from the podium? What's the correct way? What's allowed? His wife, Melania, got on social media today and said she was so ashamed of what happened and that these people were basically terrorists, and she's like, it should be treated as though they were trying to take over the government. I mean, if you know anything about the military, this is basically treason, which is punishable by death. Now, that's kind of weird to think about when you think about the fact that our country was founded on treason. We're a treasonous group of people. We uprose against the colonies as colonies against the British. Um, we said enough to the Britons, and we established our own independence through treason. Are we part of that now? Are these people part of that, or is this patriots who believe that they were doing the right thing? It's kind of hard to say, especially when you see a guy dressed up in the weird fur cap thing with the horns and his face paint. That's a guy that wants attention. I mean, let's face it. He's like, "Notice me, I'm here, raw freedom." He's having his Braveheart moment with his weird costume. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I know it's a conversation that I don't necessarily want to have with people, but I don't mind having it with a person. It's sort of like talking about aliens. I mean, I don't know if you guys have paid attention to NASA lately, but NASA's posting photos of unidentified objects going between the space station and the Earth. I mean, they're nobody's talking about it, but we're monitoring things flying by our planet. They actually show video from people's accounts on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, videos from the International Space Station of these objects. This one particular, it looks like a big flying turd. There's no other way to describe it, but it's huge and long, and it goes by our planet at very controlled speed. I don't know. I think everybody's hyper focused on Trump by name and less focused on each other as much as they should be. I am thankful that I have a group of friends that we can get together and not talk about politics. We can talk about having a birthday with a friend or having dinner or things going on in people's lives individually. But there's other things going on that are way cooler and way more fun and have more of an impact on us individually day to day. I mean, it's just the truth. I'm very excited for football coming towards their championship games. There was a lot of really good wild card games this weekend. Give it up to the Buffalo Bills. They really came out strong against the Colts. There was a young blossoming quarterback that we saw. Hinkie, I think is his name. Who is he playing for? I forget. Anyway, the Washington Redskins. Yeah. And guy played like a superstar. They didn't win, but he was awesome. He really played his butt off. It's like his first or second game. And then it dawned on me, oh yeah, Alex Smith was the quarterback. And then I had to explain to everybody who Alex Smith was in the room. And I was like, how do you people not follow anything in sports with this guy? This guy's really got an amazing story. But we get to see Tom Brady once again lead a team, not the Patriots, but lead a team to the playoffs. The Buccaneers going. Just a few games that really I was impressed. Last night, the Cleveland Browns were up 4 touchdowns in the first quarter against the Steelers. I was like, whoa. I have secretly said that I believe that the Cleveland Browns are everyone's favorite team, even though they don't admit it. It's sort of like having that weird kid across the street that smells like Pop-Tarts that wants to play football, and he's got a football. He's like, hey guys, want to play football? You're like, all right, yeah, we'll pick him. Come on. And he just keeps showing up every day. Hi guys, want to play football? And he's not that good, but he keeps showing up, and every once in a while you let him win a game, and if he actually legitimately wins, you're like, hey, good for you, kid. Playing basketball or something. But the Browns are this legendary team that have had a storied past, but really haven't had much success lately. And Baker Mayfield, the minute he got drafted, I was like, oh, he's going to turn this around, because I watched him in college at Oklahoma, and I was like, this guy is the real deal. He's exciting. And he came with the Browns and immediately started igniting a fire under them. And they drafted well and they picked up a lot of good talent. And this may be their year. I mean, they really look good. Last night, their head coach and 4 of their starting players, I think it was 4, maybe more, were out because of COVID. Didn't matter. Next person up. Let's do it. Let's play. And they abused the Steelers. I mean, it was actually fun to watch. And I like the Steelers. I think they're a decent team, even though their quarterback raped that girl in Georgia and got away with it. Nobody talks about that. Yeah, Google Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah. Then he ended up marrying a girl that looks just like the girl. That's the creepy part. He's got a type. But hey, man, whatever. It's football. If you can throw a touchdown and win the Super Bowl, you get off, right? Ask the Ravens. There's lots of teams out there that have criminals playing for them, and everybody just brushes it over and goes, yeah, but have you seen him play? Guy's amazing. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up tonight. Ohio State Buckeyes are playing the Alabama Nick Saban dominant force of nature. Ohio versus Alabama. It's going to be interesting. National championship game. A lot of people believe Ohio State doesn't belong there because they only played, 6 games, 8 games, something like that. I don't know. But it's going to be a fun game. I think both teams have a lot of weapons. So it's going to be fun to watch. We have friends that are Ohio State fans. My wife is a Nick Saban fan because he's so pretty. That's what she says. So, and the guy competes at a high level all the time. I heard it said one time that he and Belichick were really similar in the fact that they spawned off a lot of good talent. They came from good talent. The hard part, though, is every year you face off against people who know your tricks and you just keep outwitting them. And he's one of those guys that he's had some big wins against people who he trained, who he taught. And to do that on that level is really amazing. This will be an interesting game. I'm looking forward to watching it. I don't know who's going to win. No idea. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching or listening to the Stuff I Heard podcast. I do one of these once a week. I've been doing them on Mondays with my buddy Josh Treadaway. He got a nail in his tire, though. He's like, I can't make it, which is fine because I didn't really know what I was going to talk about until I hit record. So this is just for me and you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you are in your bunker right now and you've got your Chewbacca outfit wanting to storm the castle, please don't. There are other ways to do this. I thought the funniest meme this past week was Colin Kaepernick picture, and he says, "You'd think there was a better way to protest." And I was like, that was timely and funny. That was good. I like that. So thank you, everybody, for reaching out and giving me tips on the podcast. I appreciate it. Something to think about. I got a message from a guy this week who posted on Facebook. He said, if you got the COVID shot, does that make you feel like a better person or safe? It's kind of an interesting topic. So anyway, y'all take care. Thanks for listening. And as always, cue the cow.
I want you guys to give me more likes. Give me more likes.